Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. Later on, we're going to be talking about educational choice and meet somebody who's benefiting from it. But first, a few predictions and a look back on the political year that was from the Colorado Springs Gazette. Wayne Laugesen, good to see you again.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for making the
It's
haul
fun.
over the hill.
That's right.
And you want to know who has to read my column before you do? Blame him for anything you see. Chuck Plunkett from the Denver Post editorial board. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, John.
So, can we all agree? What was the big surprise in 2017 politically? Was there something pivotal other than just the reaction to Trump?
Just the reaction to Trump?
Just a reaction.
Oh, it's kind of hard to beat that. I think I will never forget 2017. It'll always be through the lens of watching the Trump presidency. Can you think of something bigger than that?
Other than that, I think it's all the pop-up sex abuse allegations. I didn't see that coming, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it going forward. It's become a real, whether an allegation is true or not, either way, it's become a great new weapon in politics.
It is. I mean, to think of Roy Moore, which I think it will be the election of 2017. I didn't see that one happening. I thought he would still win. Are we relieved? Well, I know you're relieved he didn't win.
I thought he would win too. I was predicting a narrow victory the day before. Wasn't going to be surprised either way. I don't think the Republicans won either way.
Yeah.
They didn't lose either way. So the next day came along and it just sort of came and went and nobody really cared.
They might have won more with him losing in the long term.
Probably.
I think that was an albatross that was going to stick with them all the way through.
He was going to be a huge problem for them. Now, they did lose a Senate seat, so that's a big deal. But, given their narrow margin. So they lost something substantial, but I think you're right. I think that it would have been a lot bigger problem. This is kind of like what happened in Massachusetts. Remember when Scott Brown was elected? Probably going to be a temporary state of affairs. We'll see. They'll probably get the seat back soon. Well,
let's bring it back here. 2017 in Colorado was a very progressive year. I think about growth control proposals in places like Lakewood. I'm thinking of government buyout of internet in Fort Collins, tax increases on tobacco up in Aspen, municipalization of power supply, all these things, and the
anti-fracking folks.
And the anti-fracking
and then there was a huge one in Douglas County. I mean, that has national implications, where a progressive school board was elected and they immediately undid the voucher scholarship program that had become a topic at the Supreme Court, that the conservative board basically won at the Supreme Court.
And you had the progressive teachers union supported candidates. Two of them made inroads at DPS.
And kept their majorities in Jeffco. So everywhere I looked in the 2017 election, the hardcore left seemed to make sizable progress. So let me bring it here. Does 2018 see a progression of that? Is this going to be a tsunami year for not just Democrats, but for progressive causes in Colorado?
Well, I mean, that'll be interesting to watch. I think that the progressives, or the Democrats in general, obviously have a huge shot in the arm. They've got a lot of motivation from the Women's March through the Me Too movement, through the Roy Moore situation. I don't think everyone's just forgot that the next day. I think that will resonate all the way to November 2018 for a whole lot of people. That will be enormous motivation that the Republicans got behind that horrible candidate. And the question now will be to see whether the Democrats can put together candidates that can reach that middle ground, those unaffiliated voters, because while we're getting more than accustomed to the idea that Republicans have a lot of really hardliners in among their ranks, among the populists at least, we haven't yet really seen how the progressives are going to play out and affect that party. And that's going to be fun to watch.
I don't think that the left or progressives should take too much energy from Judge Jailbait winning in Alabama. He barely won. And so, I mean, he barely lost is what I'm saying. The Democrat barely won. And that should have been an easy victory for them. So I don't think that's necessarily a good sign for progressives going into 2018. As far as some of these things in Colorado, look, right on the heels of the Trump election, voters in Colorado Springs elected a progressive city council because conservatives, Republicans stayed home. They were they were sort of at ease. They were sort of happy with the way things were going. So if that happens through 2018, it could be a problem for Republicans.
Well, and let's talk about the gubernatorial race for a second. This will be the first gubernatorial race where we have open primaries. So an unaffiliated could vote in either one, which they could have before. They could have walked in and at the polling place changed their registration. But this, by being mailed 2 different ballots, really changes things. For the first time, it looks like Democrats might actually have a primary. I'm loving that. But Democrats have a way of pulling their primary contenders together.
Right.
So they're not going to have 5 of them. They might have 2, maybe 3 at the end of the day. I give an advantage to Polis. I don't know.
I mean, that's the smart money. That's what the smart money says. He's got the money. He can outspend his opponents without breaking a sweat, and he's got huge name recognition. And
well, he's also got something more. He's going to have.
He's got the fractivists, the energy of the progressives.
He's got the anti-energy
folks.
folks.
Bernie Sanders people.
He's got gay rights folks. He's got the marijuana folks. He's been a strong. So a lot of those core constituents, and Mike Johnston was the guy who put in a bill that brought a little bit of accountability to school teachers. So I think a lot of those school teachers are not going to be voting for him. They're going to be splitting it up between Kerry Kennedy
and he was Amendment 66.
If we learned anything in November 2017, it's that the folks who are on the other side of the school reforms in Denver are incredibly motivated and angry.
Well, so Jared Polis is a Colorado guy. I mean, the Democrats don't really have a primary. They've already cleared the field, essentially. There are other people in the race, but we all know how this is going to go. Jared doesn't have to ask anybody for money. He can spend whatever he wants or needs to spend on this. People like him. He's that folksy guy. He's got that sort of Hickenlooper folksiness about him. He wears polo shirts and bow ties and crazy socks and sneakers on the floor of the House. And he
has that approachability. Listen,
he's a high-tech, self-made multimillionaire. How much more Colorado can you get than Jared Polis? And so then what you're going to have are, Republicans having a big feisty primary that certainly benefits Tom Tancredo, who is on the same side of most of the social issues with Jared Polis. Pro-marijuana, doesn't have a problem with same-sex marriage, any of that kind of stuff that tends to divide Republicans and Democrats. It's not there when you're talking about the libertarian Tom Tancredo.
What Jared has, and Coloradans love this, is that bit of folksiness but likability. Bill Owens had likability. Cory Gardner has the likability. Hick has it in spades. And there's something quirky about Jared, and he plays into it, and he's approachable.
He is approachable, and I think he'll do very well among unaffiliateds. I also think Tom Tancredo does very well among unaffiliated for all the aforementioned. Yes.
All right. So right now we all, if we're putting out a prediction today at the beginning of the year, things change. But I think this is Jared's to lose in the primary.
Well, there are some good Democratic candidates. We shouldn't neglect them.
Well, I'm not talking good or bad. I'm talking about likelihood of winning.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to play that game, that's what we're doing right now. No one's going to fault us for thinking highly of Jared Polis' chances.
All right, then let me pull you to the other side. My team, Team R, is a circular firing squad each and every time. I mean, we do it every time, from doing a really large scale with Dan Mays, Holtzman, and Beau Prey. Even last time, if we had a better primary, could that have helped us out? I'm not certain who wins. What is the main issue for Republicans in the primary? Is it just name recognition and it's Tom's if he wants it?
I mean, when I talk to Republican strategists, that's what they say, that pretty much no matter what he does, going into it and throughout, Tom Tancredo will maintain 25 to 30% of the Republican vote. And if you've got, what do we have now, 4 or 5 of the candidates? Many will petition on. Nine Republican candidates. 9 Republican candidates.
And I imagine
and 4 or 5 of them will petition on.
Right.
And you'll have...
Several of them are going to drop off.
Right.
Yeah, petitioning on for, and people don't realize this, petitioning on for governor is not as easy as you think. It's an expensive thing, and you cannot get a signatory on, I believe, on for more than one candidate. So whoever gets out and petitions early, it's easier compared to doing it later. So I predict 4 or 5 candidates will make it to the ballot.
And the math on this is real simple. Once you get to that primary ballot, you've got the Attorney General, you have the State Treasurer, either one of whom could do well in a primary against Tom Tancredo, getting all of the non-Tom Tancredo vote. Fact is, they both stay in. Neither of them is going to get out. You're going to have a few others, like you said, 4 or 5 on the ballot. That's what happens to the non-Tom Tancredo vote. It gets divided 4 or 5 or 6 ways. Everything else goes to Tom Tancredo. Do the math. It's simple.
So then what happens? We project it further out. Polis against Tancredo.
That was my question. You want my job? You want to sit here? Oh my God, Mr. Editor, always pushing me around. All right.
Well, it's I've gotten used to this with your column. I got to speed it. Get to the point, John.
I think, all things being equal, I give this to Jared. I think the reaction to Trump in a state that already voted for Hillary, that voted Democrat for Hickenlooper, I think Tom is going to have a huge uphill battle. At this point, if I had $20, I put it on Governor Polis. Anybody want to take it on?
If I had to bet today, I would put my money on Jared Polis becoming the next governor of Colorado. Fortunately, I don't have to bet today. None of us have to bet today on that. So it certainly could go another way. And it's not definitely going to be, it's not a certainty that Tom Tancredo is the candidate, but whoever gets the Republican nomination could win. Because what happens in 2018 is going to have everything to do with what, a phrase that was coined by James Carville a long time ago and made famous by Clinton. It's the economy, stupid. And that's what's going to determine really what happens in 2018.
Well, and the oil and gas industry is going to line up against Polis, or it would have reason to. You got to take that into consideration.
But he will be able to match them dollar for dollar. There is a divide happening inside Democrats. Ted Trimpa, who I respect quite a bit, said, you guys had it in 2016 of this hardcore outside group pushing out the mainstream with Trump. I'm worried that we're next, that the Bernieite faction comes swinging in and takes it. And I think a lot of those folks are unaffiliated, and they're going to be harder to buy, even if oil and gas matches Jared punch for punch.
I don't see how Tancredo wins whichever Democrat. Well, that's all you don't know until you see how the campaign goes. But in a state that went for Hillary by 5 percentage points over Donald Trump, that now has watched an entire year, and by November nearly another year of the shenanigans and the embarrassments of Trump, they're going to associate a Tom Tancredo with Trump.
If Tom reads those tea leaves before the primary, he might get out. I mean, Tom is not going to run just to lose again. Maybe not. If that were the case, last question. Which Republican out of the remaining 8 would be most likely to beat Jared Polis?
Well, this has nothing to do with which of them I favor, but I think that it's going to come down to Cynthia Kaufman or Walker Stapleton. They each come from a good platform to run for governor. Walker has a good story. Walker has been running for governor for a long time, and he's done a lot of things. He has a lot to run on. So I don't know between Cynthia and Walker who I would give the edge to, but it just seems to me that these are 2 people who have been elected statewide and are on solid platforms to run for governor. Now, it doesn't mean that one of the business people in this race doesn't come across as very dynamic and really pull ahead. But right now, as it stands right now, I would say that it would be between those 2.
And Cynthia's a good campaigner. She's a woman. Stapleton's a strong, and a year that would be after the Me Too movement and all, especially if, and that's not going to die away. I agree with Wayne. That's the other huge thing that came out of the 2017, and there's no way that's dying out in 2018. And Stapleton is a good candidate. His stance, his leadership on para is something that people will respect and know him for. But remember, I'm reminded all the time that people that come from legacies political traditions aren't as in vogue right now, and they're going to tie him to the Bush family. And you saw how the Republican primary went in 2016.
All right, we can hold these gentlemen to this. And both of you are betting your jobs on this, so thank you much. Stay tuned.